Kenya Certificate of Primary Education National Examinations. Justice David Marete Njage flaunts his record of clearing 47 cases in a month as one of his strengths as the best candidate for the next Chief Justice. And Lawrence Warenge, the main suspect in the killing of his 4 family members and a worker at Karura area in Kiambu County, is charged with 5 counts of murder.
Good evening once again. If you're tuning in, this is Channel 1 News Hour and I'm Regina Manyara. My sign language counterpart there is none other than Lucy Mwaura. Now, Faith Mumo Kawi from Kirimani Primary School is a top candidate in the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education with 433 marks. In the special needs category, Brandon Otundo scooped 420 marks to emerge top. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha says overall performance improved in the 2020 results compared to 2019, even though the highest mark dropped from 440 in 2019 to 433 in 2020. A total of 1,179,192 candidates sat the examinations compared to 1,000,000.8 in 2019. Now, of the candidates who wrote the exam this year, 590,450, that is 50.07%, were boys, while 588,742, representing 49.93%, were girls.
Kenya Council members present.
According to the results released by Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha, Faith Mumo Kawi emerged the best nationwide, scoring 433 marks. Wesonga Nanzala and Mureithi Angel tied at 432 marks, while Wanyonyi Samuel, Castro Williams and Tarus Chepkemboi sealed the top 5 list each with 431 marks. Special needs schools produced 10 candidates with 400 marks and above. Brandon Otundo garnered 420 marks. Kibet Gibson Diema managed 411. Kioko Joseph, Isabwa Blessings, and Naomi Yvonne Omare tied at 409 marks. The Ministry of Education says the number of 2020 KCPE candidates with special needs increased from 1,176 in 2019 to 1,255 in 2020.
This was an indicator that most candidates scored better grades than the previous year. In particular, I'm impressed that public schools have shown in the 2020 KCPE examination by scooping 10 out of 15 slots of the overall best 15 candidates.
Meanwhile, the number of candidates who scored between 1 and 99 marks reduced by 307 to 1,086 in 2020 compared to 1,393 candidates in 2019. The number of male and female candidates increased by 46,868 at 8.62% and 48,868 at 9.2% respectively. 20 counties are said to have registered more female and male candidates, and they include Isiolo, Meru, Vihiga, Kakamega, Busia, Uasin Gishu, Migori, and Makueni, among others. Meanwhile, West Pokot, Bomet, Baringo, Kericho, and Bungoma had the highest entry for candidates who were 12 years and below, from 20,086 registered candidates in the 2020 KCPE examinations.
One would have expected that the underage children should be from the cities, where the parents are well-to-do.
Irene Mchuma, Udim, Channel 1.
Now, songs and dance rent their air as parents and teachers at ACK Maseno Girls Boarding School celebrated producing the best Kenya Certificate of Primary Education Examinations candidate in Nyanza region and the second best nationally. Mureithi Angel Gakenya scored 432 marks out of a possible 500. She credited her exemplary performance to hard work and discipline. Her dream is to become a neurosurgeon in future.
but I'm thankful to God and all my teachers, my mom, my sister, and other people like Mr. Dan Mauro and Augustine Odanga, who's my grandfather, and very many people. I cannot finish the list, all my friends in Maseno.
I am very happy that my girl has emerged number 2 in the country. Has really made me very, very happy.
So I would attribute this success to hard work. Discipline is key, and it didn't just come. It was not a walk in the park.
I want to thank God, and I want to thank you too for coming to celebrate the results with us. We presented 322 candidates in this examination, and we are happy to note that the leading has had 425.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank God and my teachers, my parents, for the unfailing efforts that they have given to us. And I could have not done it without them, so I really thank them so much.
I'd like to thank my teachers and, of course, thank God, my parents, and the school as a whole. The environment has been very conducive. Our teachers have been working very hard without giving up.
Congratulations there, Kenyan. Now, Alex Muzuri of BZB Primary School, Chuda, has emerged the best student in Mombasa County with 421 marks, according to the just announced Kenya Certificate of Primary Education results. Now, elsewhere in Garissa County, Ifra Mohammed Shirie, who is both physically and visually handicapped from a young Muslim academy, beat all the odds to score 405 marks. Let's hear from some top performers from different parts of the country.
My parents and teachers. It has been hard work and effort, and it has paid off.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Almighty for the 416 marks that He granted me this examination.
Walemavu watie bidii masomoni, wasivunjike moyo. Mungu daima ako na wao, na ukitia bidii watafaulu maishani. Disability is not inability.
Because of the efforts put by the teachers and personal revision that we've come this far, to pursue law. Even right now, they are choosing the new Chief Justice. In future, you can expect to see me there.
Yeah. Public schools are bad. Well, it's not actually that way. Public schools are the place to be. All I could say is that hard work pays off.
You work hard, you work smart, you do what people are not doing, you go an extra mile, and in the end it paid off. I'm excited, shocked, happy, but all in all, I thank God.
Today, I'm seeing now my dream of going to Kapsabet Boys High School coming into reality. And my dream career is to become a captain so that I can drive cruise ships around the world. We were expecting low results due to the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting the school program, but as you can see today, we have good results and we thank God.
I got 409 marks and I'm very happy. I would like to join Kenya High School and be a neurosurgeon when I grow up.
Now, English composition, Kiswahili lugha, Kenyan Sign Language Objective, mathematics and religious education have emerged as best performed subjects in the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exam. Now, the 5 papers recorded an improvement in performance in the year 2020 when compared to 2019. However, 5 other papers, among them English language, Kiswahili Insha, Kenya Sign Language Composition, Science and Social Studies, recorded a drop in performance in the just concluded, presented 2020 KCPE results.
The government says there's a lot of positives to pick from 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education, starting with notable improvement in the performance of candidates in various subjects.
I'm happy to announce that 5 papers recorded an improvement in the performance of 2020 as compared to 2019.
In the results announced Thursday, learners registered improved performance in 5 papers, among them English composition, Kiswahili lugha, Kenya Sign Language Objective, mathematics and religious education. 5 other papers, English language, Kiswahili Insha, Kenya Sign Language Composition, Science and Social Studies, recorded a drop in performance in the year 2020 when compared to 2019.
In terms of gender, female candidates performed slightly better than their male counterparts in English, Kiswahili, and Kenya Sign Language. Male candidates performed slightly better than their female candidates in mathematics, science, social studies, and religious education.
With Magoha noting that the conduct of the 2020 KCPE had relied heavily on best practices and concerted efforts put in place by all stakeholders.
Now, government maintains that all candidates who served the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Examination will transition into secondary school. Education Cabinet Secretary there, Professor George Magoha, while terming the overall performance remarkable in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, called for cooperation between parents and other education stakeholders to ensure that all Form 1 slots are claimed by their rightful owners.
About 3 weeks after Standard 8 pupils wrote their 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Examination in 28,460 centers across the country, the 1,179,192 candidates can now tell the outcome of their efforts. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha, who officially released the results on Thursday afternoon at Mitihani House in Nairobi, noted COVID-19 challenges notwithstanding, the candidates' performance was exemplary.
In the 2020 KCPE examination is thoroughly commendable and has shown no remarkable difference from the performance in the past years.
To acknowledge and thank all the 608 primary school teachers who prepared these candidates for the examinations. Clearly, this was a daunting task given the fact that the preparations took place at a time our country was battling with COVID-19 effects.
12,000 candidates were reportedly absent during the exams, this translating to 1% of the total number of candidates who registered. With the selection exercise for Form 1 scheduled to commence on 28th of May, the government is keen to ensure the 100% transition policy is achieved.
I wish to assure the country that the ministry has already conducted an audit of all new and existing vacancies in all our private and public schools to enable us to admit all learners under the free-day secondary school.
The government expects every learner to take up their Form 1 places in the schools they will be admitted to. Those from humble backgrounds will be enrolled in the Elimu Scholarship, and for the second year running, the government will offer 9,000 scholarships under the program.
So nobody should have any tricks. This is not a scholarship that will go through the back door to get. We shall interview you, and we shall inspect you, and we shall come into your house.
All parents, all guardians, and all of us should be prepared to make sure that all the learners who are going to receive the results move to the next level.
At the same time, the Ministry of Education will immediately start preparations for the 2021 Kenya Certificate of Primary Examination and Kenya Certificate of Secondary Examinations, which will be administered early next year.
After bracing the harsh conditions amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 KCPE candidates nonetheless performed well. The call now is to all parents and guardians to ensure that all children move to the next level. Kamche Menza for Channel 1 News at the Mitihani House, Nairobi.
We will keenly focus on that issue when it comes to transition into secondary schools there. Now, cases of impersonation and candidates found in possession of pre-prepared notes in the examination rooms are just some of the irregularities recorded during the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations held between the 22nd and 24th of March this year. Nevertheless, the government says all candidates who engaged in exam malpractice will get their results.
Measures put in place by the government to curb irregularities in national examinations are bearing fruits as showcased in the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education results released on Thursday by Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha. According to Professor Magoha, overall incidents of exam cheating have reduced thanks to robust security arrangements implemented by the multi-sectoral examinations monitoring teams.
Through the multi-sectoral examination monitoring team, these measures ensure that cases of irregularities during the sitting of examinations and during the marking processes were either stamped out or nipped in the bud before they could not happen.
However, some forms of malpractice were witnessed, including cases of impersonation during the 3 days examinations held in March.
5 cases of impersonation were detected during this examination process, and 7 candidates were found with prepared notes in examination rooms.
It is a relief to the candidates who engaged in exam irregularities, as they will also receive all their results.
But the president has pronounced himself that we shall release the results of all the candidates. We shall release the part of the results of all the candidates, but those staffers who allowed this to happen shall be severely punished. That is the variation to this speech.
But Professor Magoha was categorical that invigilators and school staff who abated malpractice will be punished.
The name Titus Musili from Kaunguni Primary School in Kitui County, whom I was informed had been sent home from school over flimsy grounds of going to look for lunch money. He ended up missing with the English composition paper. The government has intervened to ensure that justice has been given to this child, and the child will get his results along with the others.
Suleiman Yeri, Channel 1 News.
Now, in bid to bridge the gap that has been necessitated by the COVID-19 disruptions, President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed that all teachers and support staff in Kenyan schools be allowed to take the COVID-19 vaccine as part of measures to ensure that schools are safe from the virus. At the same time, the Ministry of Education will immediately start preparations for the 2021 KCPE and KCSE examinations, which will be administered early next year.
The government has maintained that it is scheduled to reopen schools for that term on May 10, 2021 for all classes except for grade 4 and Form 1.
As part of our efforts to recover the lost time following the long closure due to COVID-19 last year, we reorganized dates for schools in a manner that would help us recover lost time.
To mitigate the effects of the global pandemic in schools and create safe spaces for learners, President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed that all teachers and support staff be vaccinated before the schools reopen.
This morning, His Excellency the President has directed that all teachers and support staff in our schools be allowed to take COVID-19 vaccinations as part of the measures to ensure that our schools are safe.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha said that even as the government remains hopeful that schools will open as scheduled, it is still monitoring the country's COVID-19 situation.
We are hopeful that we will open as scheduled, although we continue to monitor the trends of the COVID-19 situation and the school's preparedness to adhere to the ministry's health guidelines.
Magoha said the ministry will immediately start preparations to mount 2021 KCPE and KCSE examinations, which will be administered early next year. Ruth Wamboi for Channel 1 News.
How about a short break there, but we still have more prepared for you this evening. Do not go away.
Je, umeomoka? Kama hujaomoka kwenye Quickly ndio mambo yote. Hapa tuko na fridge, kodi yake ni CM. Tuko na gas cooker, kodi yake ni CK. Tuko na TV, kodi yake ni TV. Tuko na simu aina ya Samsung ni SM ama Oppo ni Oppo. My friend, mahali popote unanitizama, eka hizo kodi zake kisha utume kwa 4032353. 4032353. Alafu utakuwa unaomoka na hizi bidhaa. Kumbuka kwenye Quickly ni bila bora zaidi kwa bei ya chini kwa chini.
On the next episode of Ashoka.
Where are you going?
To atone for my father's misdeeds. Father! You are his son. Siana, if you want to take revenge, then you have to treat Bindusar as your father. Don't you even dare to touch Queen Charumitra.
Father is being held captive. And they have also taken over the palace.
Next on.
Naanza kujiganda, kujipiga kifua, akidharau kina mama.
Twanga mtu, kabisa kwanza, twanga mtu iko nini?
Kuuliza na twanga nani? Sina kuongelesha wewe. Ile mtata tapa kiamka.
Ndio bwanangu tu ni kumfuatafuata saa yote.
Kama huyu Zoe wampenda sana, ungeenda umbuku maternity. Tumeelewana?
Usije kuuliza maji hapo tuletee balaa bure.
Na waingia wapi? Nadhani mkamalizane.
Mara ngapi nakwambia kuja hapo kwa tunasumba sitangu. Umekuja kumharibu. Kwanza hata una class.
Tabia kama hizo ni bwana.
Talk of teams and teams behind the team. The chase for Emirates FA Cup is on this weekend. Two eventful semi-final matches by England's leading lights are on the cards at Wembley Stadium. On Saturday, 17th of April, Chelsea will clash with Manchester City at 7:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Leicester City will battle it out with Southampton on Sunday, 18th of April at 8:30 p.m. Aptly put, as a team, there is a lot to play for. You either cruise to the finals or get drowned. Live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
You're watching KBC Channel 1, and indeed it's Business Insight on a day, that the country is celebrating the just announced, KCPE results there. Parents and pupils alike there, some already sharing their dreams and aspirations and to their dream schools that they want to attend. I also wanted to just share some of the messages that we're already receiving here. Remember, our official station handle on Twitter is at KBC Channel 1 News. We have Ruth Oguna there, who scored 395 in Mombasa there. Congratulations, Ruth. Very well. Your mother has been quite supportive there, saying that you have done well. We also have other children there who've already done their examinations and they're yet. I think there was a system jam here and there, but they're yet to get their results. But we are here. If you want to send those particular messages, we are open to that feedback. Remember to tell us where you're watching this particular broadcast from. Now on to other stories is that Justice David Marete Njage of the Employment and Labour Relations Court has vowed to clear the backlog of cases and expedite the hearing and determination of corruption cases if appointed the next Chief Justice. Justice Marete has told the Judicial Service Commission that he holds the record for clearing 47 cases in a month. Justice Manyara, however, was taken to task over claims of being high-handed with court staff of an incident where he allegedly arrested and punished a court staff for making noise along the court corridors during a court proceeding. Ben Chumba reports.
Briefly tell us about yourself.
The search for the country's next Chief Justice entered its fourth day with Justice David Marete Njage taking the hot seat, hoping to convince the Judicial Service Commission that he is best qualified for the job.
I am good to go. I am very, very good material for this kind of assignment. 2, daring is my other name. There is nothing which shakes me.
The 61-year-old judge of the Employment and Labour Relations Court will quickly find himself in a tight corner after he was told to justify some of the employment disputes he handled.
One of the issues that were discussed in the tribunal concerned an order that you gave, which was considered sub judice.
I cannot answer your question without referring to the substance of that matter. The set of consequences which would occur if you didn't give the interim orders, and this other set which would occur if you issued the interim orders.
In 2020, Justice Marete was suspended for nearly 5 months, accused of, among others, gross misconduct, violation of the Constitution and bias in a court decision. Though he was acquitted of any wrongdoing in September 2020 by a tribunal, the JSC panel wanted to know how he intends to strengthen integrity in the judiciary if appointed as the next Chief Justice. An inquiry by Justice Mohammed Warsame into the state of his mental health came under sharp scrutiny by the Professor Olive Mugenda-led panel. Warsame sought to know why Justice Marete holds a card for persons with disabilities.
And then in the case, the nature of disability, visual, mental. Is that a reflection of you? I have a visual issue. 2, I am diabetic, and occasionally I get affected by what we call low sugar issues, hypoglycemia. So when they looked at it, they dismissed the second issue as a case of disability. And that is where this error came in.
In the 5 hours interview, Justice Marete was also taken to task by the JSC panelists over claims of high-handedness after he allegedly arrested and punished a court staff for making noise along the court corridors during a court proceeding.
The Honorable Mr. Justice D.K. Marete has been having problems with the drivers since 2014. I am not able to deal with the police drivers in the sense that I have a very rigid schedule.
Why are you so particular about one driver?
I mean, I would have anybody for a driver as long as you are able to meet what my needs.
On Friday, former Director of Public Prosecutions Philip Murgo will face the interviewing panel to demonstrate his suitability for Chief Justice. Ben Chumba, reporting for Channel 1 News.
Of Justice Lawrence Warunge, the main suspect in the murder of his 4 family members and a worker at Karura area in Kiambu County, has been charged with 5 counts of murder. Appearing in a virtual court session before Lady Justice Mary Kasango, Warunge, however, pleaded not guilty to the charges.
Efforts to serve justice for the 5 victims brutally murdered in Kiambu County in January formally began Thursday. Lawrence Warunge, the man at the center of one of the deadliest moments of rage, appeared before a Kiambu court where he pleaded not guilty to the alleged murders. Warunge is accused of killing his father Nicholas Warunge, mother Anne Warunge, brother Christian Njenga, nephew Maxwell Njenga, and construction worker James Kinyanjui on the night of January 5th and 6th, 2021. The court directed that the suspect be remanded at the Nairobi Industrial Area Prison pending the pretrial hearing scheduled for May 11th, 2021. Elsewhere, 7 alleged commercial sex workers have been charged with demanding money with menace. The suspects allegedly stormed the office of Nairobi-based lawyer George Kithi demanding payment. They pleaded not guilty before Magistrate Bernard Ochoi and were released on a cash bail of 200,000 shillings. Meanwhile, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, has delegated his powers to Kenya Revenue Authority to prosecute a criminal case facing Humphrey Kariuki and 6 others. The move was strongly opposed by defense lawyers led by senior counsel Kioko Kilokumi, saying the Constitution gives the DPP absolute power to prosecute. The lawyers told trial magistrate Francis Andai that they will challenge the action by the DPP. The case will be heard on May 31st.
Counties are on the spot for allegedly hoarding the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine in readiness for the second round of vaccination. The Ministry of Health says such actions are denying vulnerable Kenyans an opportunity to get the jab into their arms. Chief Administrative Secretary Dr. Rashid Aman made the claims even as he announced that Kenya has recorded 1,091 new coronavirus infections from 5,958 samples tested in the last 24 hours.
The Ministry of Health has allayed fears of vaccine shortage in Kenya following a moratorium of the export of the Oxford AstraZeneca jab by India. The Minister of Health says counties should stop hoarding vaccines because 2.5 million doses are coming next month.
The government, through the Ministry of Health, would like to take this opportunity to inform Kenyans that some 2.5 million doses provided through the COVAX facility are expected in the country in the month of May.
So far, 616,166 doses have been administered in the country, with Nairobi leading the pack with 198,808 inoculations, followed by Nakuru with 34,682, Uasin Gishu 31,503. 30,176 people have been vaccinated in Kiambu County, and in Nyeri, 21,845 doses have been administered so far. The 5 counties with the lowest number of vaccinations include Lamu with 451, Marsabit 462, Tana River 633, Mandera 1,209, and Isiolo 1,377.
We have noted that some counties are holding on to vaccines, actually holding them in the mistaken notion of releasing the current doses only when they receive doses for the second phase of vaccination.
Kenya in the last 24 hours reported 1,091 new coronavirus infections from 5,958 samples screened, pushing the infection rate to 18.3%. 4 patients succumbed to the disease, while 392 others recovered from the disease. The total number of fatalities and recoveries now stands at 2,424 and 100,637 respectively. Well, the government plans to vaccinate at least 30% of Kenya's population, this with an aim of achieving herd immunity among its population. At the same time, Denmark becomes the first European country to abandon the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Purity Museo, Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
Ili kupata skiza tune hii lazima nishike kwa simu yako, bonyeza *811 *962 hash.
Lazima nishike mapema. Nisiposhika hii simu mapema utakasirika. Acha mimi nijua mtu ya marathon na niko na experience kabisa. Niko na experience. If you don't hurry, you will not break the record. Okay, acha nishike hii simu.
Ili kupata skiza tune hii bonyeza *811 *962 hash *811 *962 hash.
Je, umeomoka? Kama hujaomoka kwenye Quickly ndio mambo yote. Hata tuko na fridge, kodi yake ni CM. tuko na gas cooker, kodi yake ni CK. Tuko na TV, kodi yake ni TV. Tuko na simu aina ya Samsung ni SM, ama Oppo ni Oppo. My friend, mahali popote unanitizama, eka hizo kodi zake kisha utume kwa 4032353. 4032353. Alafu utakuwa unaomoka na hizi bidhaa. Kumbuka, kwenye Quickly ni bila bora zaidi kwa bei ya chini kwa chini.
Next on.
Mimi talipa. Usina wasiwasi man. Mimi ndio nimejitolea. Hata wewe ukitaka kunywa. Mwanamume akipenda. Huwa na furaha na nguvu. Na hii barua ni yangu, nataka unisomee. Na kama niko na uchawi. Unasemaje barua sasa?
Next on.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Midnight Show. People on the cycle, people on the bus, people passing, invited from the bus.
Reading the book.
Hyena learns a lesson. I'm going to teach you how to make a chick in a egg.
Good evening once again. You're watching KBC Channel 1 and this is Business Insight. Now, the likelihood of consuming Ugandan sugar in coming months has increased after Kenya agreed to allow the neighboring country to bring in 90,000 metric tons of the sweetener annually in bilateral talks that started on Sunday. This is contained in a joint communique that has shared this Thursday by the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development that indicates that the two countries have agreed to remove tax barriers on some of each other's goods. Now, the deal could also see the Kenya lifting the stringent measures on Ugandan maize.
Kenya and Uganda have been locked in a trade war on some goods that has seen traders from each country protest the levies, with experts saying this was against the spirit of the East African community. Uganda remains Kenya's top export destination, accounting for 11.3% of Kenya's total exports in 2020 that were worth 72 billion shillings. To foster cordial trade relations, a Kenyan delegation led by Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development CS Betty Minor arrived in Kampala on Sunday on a 7-day visit aimed at improving bilateral relations. Among issues on the table were about Uganda's sugar, milk, maize, poultry products and LPG, as well as Kenya's manufactured juices, malted beers, spirits, furniture, pharmaceutical products, processed poultry meat, tissue paper and pishori rice. After a series of meetings, the two countries have resolved to address the issues. Under the deal, the Kenyan delegation have resolved to let Uganda export to Kenya 90,000 metric tons of sugar annually. However, this is on condition that an ongoing sugar sector verification mission affirms the sugar is made in Uganda. In addition, Kenya has resolved to remove 35% import duty on Ugandan LPG cylinders and consideration about milk products from Uganda. In return, Uganda has agreed to remove taxes, import duty and levies in July this year on a number of Kenyan products such as manufactured juices, malted beers, spirits, furniture, pharmaceutical products, books and processed poultry meat. In addition, the two countries have resolved that Kenya shares with Uganda the testing and conformity standards about maize. This is after Kenya imposed stringent measures on Ugandan maize on concerns that it had high aflatoxin levels. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Now, to just reiterate, that is that the two countries have also resolved that Kenya shares, with Uganda, the testing conformity standards about maize. Now, crossing over to the corporate world is that the privatization process of some of the parastatals that had stalled will be starting in July. This is according to Public Investment and Portfolio Management Acting Director General Stanley Kamau, who says some parastatals would be sold off while others would be in government would reduce its stake, now based on the current restructuring strategy adopted by the government.
Kenya Pipeline Company, Kenya Post Authority, Kenya Railways Corporation and the National Housing Corporation are some of the parastatals that the government plans to privatize in a blueprint to be unveiled in July this year. Part of the restructuring process would see assets of the institutions disposed of to raise working capital, with the management of the parastatals also realigned to improve efficiency. However, the National Treasury says it does not intend to reduce its shareholding in some loss-making listed parastatals such as Kenya Power to ensure Kenyans continue to get essential services, but will consider reducing stakes in profitable listed companies.
The companies where you can really raise money in the secondary listing is basically Safaricom, KenGen, KCB, KPLC, and Kenya Re. You can raise money.
Part of the restructuring process would see some regulatory authorities merged in an exercise the government says will save taxpayers close to 300 billion shillings annually.
If you look at the amount of money we send to parastatal sector, it's more than 300 billion Kenya shillings every year. In fact, we talk about counties, and we are not talking about the reforms that we need to undertake in the parastatal sector.
National Treasury officials say the recent process launched to privatize state-owned sugar millers was not done properly, and the exercise will have to be done afresh once the Privatization Commission Board is put in place.
The Commission is critical in making such decisions because they are the only ones who can make recommendations on the privatization method that needs to be adopted. So that will still have to wait. So the sugar privatization process and the hotel industry is what we are saying. We will need the Privatization Commission to be on board for us to progress that.
Privatization of the parastatals is expected to be carried out with the technical input from the IMF. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Now, the government is banking on procuring and distributing GMO cotton seeds and pesticide up to 200,000 farmers in 23 counties in efforts to grow cotton production 10 times to 200,000 bales by 2022. Now, as Steve Miner reports, farmers are optimistic of harvesting and earning more from cotton, while millers like Eldoret-based Rivertex hope to produce higher quality fabrics.
Liberalization of the Kenyan market in the 1980s as a precondition to loans from the IMF and the World Bank led to the collapse of several cotton ginneries following the introduction of cheap second-hand clothes. This spelled doom for thousands of cotton farmers who abandoned cotton due to the lack of a market or low producer prices for the cotton lint. Farmers in Kenya have been harvesting an average of 5,300 tons of lint cotton against a demand of about 38,000 tons, with the deficit being imported from neighboring countries. However, in December 2019, the cabinet approved control farming of GMO cotton for commercial purposes following successful field trials conducted over a period of 5 years.
Pamba ilikuwa hiyo pamba ilikuwa wakulima walikuwa wameacha kulima kwa sababu haikuwa na soko.
The government in March last year identified 1,000 farmers in 6 counties to receive the country's first GMO cotton seed. The target is to have about 200,000 farmers involved in commercial production of GMO cotton by the year 2022 and grow production 10 times from the current 20,000 bales to 200,000 bales of cotton. Farmers are tipped to harvest and earn more from the GMO cotton, which is said to have a higher germination rate, early maturation, and a resistance to common pests, while the millers are assured of a high-quality lint.
Kenya ilikuwa na gineries 24, sasa hii tuko tuna 4. Sasa serikali wameanza pia kuanzisha hiyo machineries so that watu wakulima wa pamba wanaweza kupeleka kwa soko yenye iko tu karibu hapo.
Among buyers for such GMO cotton is the Eldoret-based Rift Valley Textile East Africa Limited, Rivertex.
Kuna watu wengi sana walikuwa wanashughulika mambo ya pamba. Na sasa tunasahii wakati huu tunawapatia mbegu bure na tunawapatia dawa bure wakulima. So tumeanza sasa kusaidia wakulima kwa sehemu ya makauntis 24 kuanzisha kupanda pamba.
Tuko na uwezo wa kutoa kilo 3,000 kwenda 4,000 ya usi ikitegemea na kaunti ile tunarun.
GMO cotton is currently planted in 15 countries globally on land measuring 24 million hectares. The top 3 leading GMO cotton producers are India on 11.6 million hectares, the USA with 5.6 million hectares, and China with 2.9 million hectares. In Africa, Kenya has joined 6 countries, namely South Africa, Sudan, Ethiopia, Malawi, Nigeria, and Eswatini, who grow the GMO cotton. Reporting for Channel 1 Business, my name is Steve Maina.
Interesting, their very own Steve Miner. Now, still keeping up with matters of trade, is that over 200 small traders in Busia County have benefited from a 5 million shillings county trade revolving fund to finance expansion of their businesses. Busia Governor Suspita Ojemong says the devolved unit is working on increasing the kitty from the current 5 million shillings to 70 million shillings in order to have a bigger impact.
Access to capital remains a key challenge for most micro and small businesses, most of which do not survive past their 5th anniversary. To address this, Busia County government introduced a county trade revolving fund to help small businesses grow and expand their ventures.
County tunasema tutatumia idara yetu kama ya trade kuwapatia mafunzo. Tutakuwa tukiwafuatilia kupatia mafunzo ili waweze kuelewa namna vile watafanya biashara na kurejesha hii pesa.
Nimepata hiyo 20,000, nashukuru Mungu, naenda kuongeza kwa biashara yangu. Natumai ya kwamba nitaongeza wengine wakati ukifika.
Elsewhere, Absa Bank Kenya has launched the Absa Asset Management Limited, a subsidiary of the bank that will offer fund and wealth management solution for its customers. The firm's officials say the new subsidiary fits in well with the bank's growth strategy and ambitions of being a fully fledged financial institution, which offers more diverse financial solutions beyond banking across the region.
Briefly, we are coming to market to showcase and offer 3 broad propositions to our customers. An institutional proposition, which we target to offer fund management services to pension funds, insurance firms, and other institutions which might need the services of a fund or asset manager.
We'll be listening to the needs of investors on what they're trying to achieve and advising them on how to allocate their money in investment asset classes. The asset classes that we hope to provide exposure to investors to range from listed stocks, to treasury bills and bonds, to corporate bonds, to private equity funds, to both onshore and offshore.
The new offerings will be rolled out in 3 phases, including institutional, retail, high net worth propositions, with the institutional proposition currently live. Terry Njenga, Channel 1 Business.
Now, how often do you use a Google search engine when trying to find a location, site or building? While your experience is bound to improve following an update to Google Earth. Now, with time lapse in Google Earth, 24 million satellite photos from the past 37 years have been compiled into an interactive 4D experience. That way, one can see into the past and present planetary changes to various sites.
As technology evolves, mankind will be able to view parts of the world as never before. Discoveries will be made in the deepest parts of the ocean, in the forest and under the ice. According to programmer Lisa Goldberg, without images, it is hard to visualize what things like urbanization, deforestation, wildfires and rising temperatures mean to our planet. Just using statistics and data doesn't get the message across. I wanted to bring a new perspective to others. In the latest update to Google Earth, the first since 2017, you can now see our planet in an entirely new dimension. Time. With time-lapse in Google Earth, 24 million satellite photos from the past 37 years have been compiled into an interactive 4D experience. Now anyone can watch time unfold and witness nearly 4 decades of planetary change. The upgrade provides a window to how the Earth and humanity are changing as forests grow or shrink, as cities expand or are abandoned, and as our world reacts to new weather conditions. Programmer Lisa Goldberg believes seeing these changes at a more personal level contextualizes what global environmental change actually means right now and what it could mean in the future. This might just affirm the need for adoption of climate-friendly ethos globally. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Holdings are limited, so its 2020 net profit marginally increased to 4.09 billion shillings, helped by lower expenses and commissions as well as higher investment income. The listed firm has announced a final dividend payout of 9 shillings per share. Here are the details of this and other stories from the corporate scene.
Jubilee Holdings Limited attributes the 2020 financial results to the confidence placed in the firm by clients. Focus on sound underwriting practices, tightening of controls over claims and expenses, and a diversified investment portfolio. Gross written premium was flat at 29.97 billion shillings, while investment income rose 12.7% to 11.3 billion shillings. Total expenses and commission reduced 2.5% to 8.86 billion shillings, helping keep the net profit at 4.09 billion shillings, which was a marginal 1.7% year-on-year increase. The board of Jubilee Holdings Limited has proposed a final dividend payout of 9 shillings per share. Meanwhile, Sharia-compliant bank, Gulf African Bank and Toyota Kenya have entered into a strategic financing partnership that will enable the bank's corporate and SMEs customer purchase vehicles through diminishing Msharaka-based vehicle financing. Under the Sharia financing model, the bank and the customer both contribute to the purchase of the vehicle, creating co-ownership. Then, the customer repays within a period of 60 months.
What we have done is, to try and collaborate and make something that is attractive to our customers and helps them through these difficult times.
Sad to be obviously entering our partnership with Gulf African Bank that will enable more Kenyans businessmen get experience and reliability and efficiency of the Hino trucks that we have through an easy financing option.
Finally, Micro and Small Enterprises Authority is refurbishing the Masaku Juakali worksite as part of the Micro Small Enterprises worksite development to promote industrial activity in constituencies. The site, which houses over 1,000 micro-small enterprises, acts as a small user facility and an innovative workspace complete with machinery and an exhibition for the MSE to develop and sell their products. Terry Njenga, Channel 1 Business.
Free Inganga, John Odwar, Timothy Okesa, Ruth Oguna and Tom Wema, as well as Jackson Kihara. Thank you very much for keeping us company. Until then, we take a short break. We'll be right back.
Next on.
Hapo mambo manne ambayo Muislamu anapata kunufaika nayo ndani ya mwezi mtukufu wa Ramadhani. Mtume sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam aliwaonesha maswahaba zake namna ambavyo kwamba Ramadhani yao inastahili kuwa.
Next on.
Go easy. Did you do anything to me? Umesemaga leo ni kujitawala. Leo ni siku yetu.
Inakaaje? Utajili?
Unakaa poa na hiyo jacket ya wenyewe. You're in as deep as I am.
This time you're seriously going down.
I don't know about you, Glenn, but I'm not going to jail for any reason whatsoever.
Neither am I.
So either you let me in, or tell Tiffany I need to see her right now.
Come on. Nini inaendelea? Talk of teams and teams behind the tiller. The chase for Emirates FA Cup is on this weekend. Two eventful semi-final matches by England's leading lights are on the cards at Wembley Stadium. On Saturday, 17th of April, Chelsea will clash with Manchester City at 7:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Leicester City will battle it out with Southampton on Sunday, 18th of April at 8:30 p.m. Aptly put, as a team, there is a lot to play for. You either cruise to the finals or get drowned. Live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Good evening. Now, despite plans by automakers to shift away from fuel-propelled vehicles to either electric or hybrid models, Kenya should pursue her oil exploration and commercial production. This is according to Charles Wangoho, the coordinator of the platform, Kenya Platform on Oil and Gas, who believes that there would be enough demand for petroleum products in Kenya and the region to sustain production. Well, I had a discussion with Charles Wangoho about this and other issues in the oil and gas sector, and this is how the conversation went down.
Now, Kenya has a dream of joining ranks with countries that produce crude oil. But is Kenya's dream and quest for black gold viable and sustainable in the long run? Joining us this conversation this evening is none other than the coordinator of Kenya Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas, none other than Charles Wangoho. Welcome.
Yeah, so we had the early oil pilot scheme, which finally ended last year, I believe in June, having successfully shipped out one shipment, I think of about 220,000 barrels of oil. And then so consequently after that, there's been a bit of a slowdown. I mean, of course, COVID has had an impact on that. But also, if you remember, last year, Talo and his partners actually put in what they called a force majeure notice, which basically, sort of they said, due to natural circumstances, they were unable to continue. This was subsequently lifted in September, and their contract was extended since then up to now, December 2021.
That being the case, Talo, the British oil explorer, has until December 31st, 2021 to present a comprehensive investment plan in oil production in Turkana, or risk actually losing that concession in the two oil fields. So do you think it will meet the deadline?
It's a bit of a tricky one because consequently the international crude oil prices have recovered. So now, because the international crude oil prices have recovered, there's a possibility that we might see them either being able to access the funding to actually push on the project, or being bought out by a player who feels that now the oil is more attractive due to the increase in crude prices. But at the same time, I think there's a challenge in terms of currently there's not much activity happening on the ground. So apart from the environmental impact assessment, there's not much activity happening in Turkana. And so whether they'll be able to finish everything, because those are significant things that are remaining before they can actually make that decision. This includes land access, finalization of the pipeline environmental impact assessment, for example. So there's still a few things pending. And so unless these things are finalized within sort of the next few months, it's difficult to beat the deadline.
Mm-hmm. But Talo has been at this game in Kenya for the last 9 years, so to speak. And that is when they discovered, the oil deposits in Lokichar. Yeah. And we're yet to get to where we're supposed to, Yani, that is develop the field for commercial production. From where you sit, what has, might have led to this delay?
Yeah, so I mean, they discovered it in 2012. And so, but what you have to look at is also Uganda discovered it much earlier. And even they haven't gotten to production yet. So it takes time, but I feel like one of the challenges has been, there's been some significant distractions, for example. So the early oil pilot scheme, the idea of tracking the oil from Turkana to Mombasa, basically derailed a lot of the planning for the bigger project. So basically, it took time to plan how to track, how to get the agreements on board until the final sort of shipment. And then we've also had other setbacks, including the international dynamics. So we discovered it in 2012. The height of
the farm has commenced the four-well exploration.
At some point, it was almost at $100. Now we've gone back down, at some point even $20, right? So that's been a huge shift in terms of that, and it has an impact on the project. So there's been some significant setbacks, and the most recent one obviously is COVID and the collapse of the oil price again.
The company annual report for December 2020 indicated that they have written off 46.8 billion shillings in exploration costs. So from an investor point of view, let's say, for example, Talo doesn't go the long way. Yeah. An investor eyeing, oil production in Kenya, would it be a commercially viable investment and, sustainable in the long run, given the experience that the British oil explorer Talo is dealing with right now?
There's two things that determine viability. One is the level of reserves. I think Kenya has just under 500 million barrels of oil. If you compare with Uganda's 1.2 billion barrels of oil, so that makes a huge difference. But that is also linked to the international price. So when the price is high, as the price has been going high recently, it makes the project more viable. And that's why I indicated even earlier that there's a possibility that you'd get another investor who might be more interested or who has the current funds to actually take this project towards
financial muscle coming in regard to that issue. There's been a shift to renewable energy. People are moving away from fossil fuels.
Yes.
Is this going to change the dynamics? How is it going to impact on us as Kenya, who is still lagging behind, so to speak, when it comes to crude oil production?
Yes, I mean, so we have a challenge. We have to basically get our oil and get it to market before the huge shift globally. But what you have to remember also is that nationally, we're still way behind. I think last time we looked at 2018 data, we had less than 1,000 electric vehicles in Kenya, right? There's been some shift in terms of smaller vehicles, for example, I think motorbikes and that kind of thing, in terms of trying to get an increment on that. But we are still at very low levels. So in terms of Kenya, I mean, we will be using oil for the foreseeable future, and it's the same with Uganda and in the region. So there is still an opportunity there in terms of, if we manage to get our oil towards production, that there will still be market. If it's not international, then at least regionally.
Now, let's talk about global oil demands and impact on pricing, and then looking at the current situation we all find ourselves in, the issue of COVID. What did you say about the future? Let's say next 6 months.
The next 6 months, what we anticipate happening is two things. Firstly, as the rate of vaccination goes up, a lot of countries will again reopen. So you will see an increased demand in oil. And because a lot of the production had stopped in some instances, we might reach a point where there might be a bit of a shortage. And that will lead to an increase in the price of oil. So that's what we are seeing in the short term. As countries continue opening up, as they increase the vaccination rates, that you'll have this short-term demand. And then after that, you'll expect that there'll be oversupply again, and the price will go down. So we're likely to see sort of a settling out of the price more towards the end of the year.
We had a review of the law to have the regulator, IPRA, just try and cushion Kenyans from high fuel costs. But since January, looking at the data and statistics, fuel prices have been on an upward trajectory. Yeah. And Kenyans are crying, because since it affects a majority of, very many basics here, from transport to even our ability to buy. Has the regulator, or rather has that particular law, met its objective?
So I don't want to appear to be sympathizing with the regulator, especially as Kenyans are currently, the regulator is not the most popular regulator in the country at the moment. But what you have to remember is that EPRA is given the formula, and the formula is within regulation and law. And so they are just, their role at the moment is just to make the calculation based on the landed costs of fuel, and ensure that, and again follow up that retailers are not selling beyond the recommended maximum retail prices. And so that's their role. Their role is protect us from private sector, going way and beyond in terms of their pricing. And that was the role of the law initially put in place. But now, this is what happened last year, and I guess this is something that we raised last year, but it didn't really capture, Kenyans as much. What happened was that as the price of crude went down due to COVID, it hit lows of almost $20. The price was never translated to the Kenyan consumer. Yeah. What happened is that the VAT was increased, the petroleum development was increased, so that basically the Kenyans never benefited from the low price, because the price would have gone down to as low as 60 shillings, for example, at the height of the collapse of the global crude price. But because taxes stepped in, and taxes became more than 50 to 60%. So now that we are seeing the international price going up, that's when we are seeing the impacts of that change in policy. But this policy happened last year. It's just that people didn't really catch it because, again, they were not seeing the immediate impact.
So, Charles, can then, if we are to get Kenyans to access, or rather, buy fuel at affordable prices, are you then saying that government can waive the taxes that it gets? Because if it increased it to over 50%, can we bring it down?
Yes, I think, and we can start, the easiest one is just to remove the petroleum development levy. And that was increased last year from 40 cents to 5 shillings and 40 cents. So already, if you look at the current price of about 122, that's 5 shillings off. It'd be already down to 117 around there, just from that. And that's an easy tax policy that can easily be changed, and that will have an impact on Kenyans. Mm-hmm. Because what we've seen, over the between February 2020 and February 2021, transport cost has been the highest. There's been the highest increment. If you look at across the board, I think it's been about 20% increment. So somebody who was paying 100 shillings, for example, is paying almost 120 now, 130, because again, the COVID regulations came in place. So the cost of transport has increased dramatically. And so I believe that it's time that government cushioned Kenyans from an increment in the fuel price. Yeah.
There have been those who have been of the opinion that, we should leave, the fuel prices to, open to the market demands. Yeah. What would that mean for Kenyans?
I'm not in agreement with that. Because the reason we put in this law was that the private sector was actually acting as a cartel, right? So they'd set the prices on a Thursday afternoon, and then all across, instead of a healthy competition between them, you'd go to all the stations, and all the stations would have the same price. So government stepped in. But then government now has stepped in, and the impact is that instead of the private sector being the ones who are gouging the price, it's actually government that is stepping in and collecting quite a huge amount in taxes and levies.
Mm-hmm. Now that we've already established that government indeed can intervene in as far as fuel prices are concerned, with the current situation, I think it finds itself in a catch-22 situation. And I'm talking about, the loan from IMF and the consequent proposal there to, increase the VAT on fuel prices. Where does this leave Wanjiku?
I think there was a proposal in 2013 again to increase VAT. There was significant public uproar about it. The catch situation is, of course, that IMF is the one who's ensuring the governments to expand the net. But at the moment, the net is as wide as it can come. I think any increment on VAT would be an undue burden on Wanjiku. and will also not be sustainable. Because you have to reach a point where tax doesn't make any sense anymore. And you're already seeing we're reaching that level. So when you're saying people are crossing over to Uganda to buy fuel because fuel is cheaper in Uganda or Tanzania, we're reaching that point where now, again, the effort that will take to actually regulate an increment will not make sense in the long term, because basically EPRA would have to increase its capacity by X amount to ensure that retailers are not again diverting fuel that's supposed to go to the regions. So I think at the moment government is in a straitjacket, but fuel is not the option that it'll have to go to. It has to look at other avenues for raising taxes, including, it'll have to look at the civil service and see where cuts are going to be made there.
So if you're given an opportunity to actually make a recommendation and see it through, to tackle this issue of fuel prices, how would you go about it, Charles?
As indicated before, I would first remove the fuel development levy. It serves no purpose at the moment, so that's already a 5% reduction in that. I'd reduce the VAT on the price of fuel as well. And again, just sort of reviewing all the levies that go into fuel, I think that to me would be the bigger impact. And then we have to again look at the retailer margins, because again, it's too attractive at the moment for the retailers. You're not seeing any retailers complaining, because normally every time you implement price control, the first people who would make noise would be the private sector. They'd say, oh, you're stifling competition. But they're awfully silent, because at the moment they have their margin, I think about 12 shillings, which they're comfortable with. And that reduces competition. So they also don't even have to, for example, advertise as much, because there's no real competition in the sector. So at the moment, I think those are the things I would do. I'd work on the petroleum development levy, as well as the retailers' margins and the VAT.
Now, looking at the retailers' margin, they've said around 12 shillings there. So if we were to cut this 4.28, that's 4 shillings and 28 cents to around 2.3, would this particular imputation of oil, or rather crude, be as attractive, or will we have lost a niche there?
We will. I think we'll still be okay. I mean, the Kenyan market is one of the bigger markets in the region, even in terms of the amount of fuel that we spend per day. Regionally, I think we are still the highest compared to Uganda or Tanzania. And so it's still an attractive market, and the retailers would still stay. And if you remember, we started off, I think the retailer margin was around 6 shillings. This has gone up over a period of time. And so therefore, I think if we are all to tighten our belts, I think everyone has to tighten our belts, including the corporate sector.
So government can also correct this?
Yes, I believe government can correct this. I do not believe that you should remove the price control mechanism, but government can step in and cushion Kenyans from the impacts.
Now let's move away from the commodity and look at infrastructure within the region. Just last week, we saw Suluhu Hassan, the 6th president of the Republic of Tanzania, make her first official, visit to Uganda there, and inking that particular deal for the East African crude oil project there. But what does this mean, for the race on crude oil production, especially within the larger East African bloc? What does this mean for Kenya?
I think on a personal level, I must say, I was a bit disappointed at that announcement. I always maintained hope that at some point Kenya and Uganda would reach an agreement on the pipeline, because if that happened, then it makes both projects way more attractive. So you bring Uganda's 1.2 billion barrels, Kenya's 500 million or 600 million barrels. So all of a sudden you're almost hitting 2 billion barrels of oil, which makes the project more attractive. And then you're sharing costs, for example, in terms of the pipeline. So both countries, it was a win-win for both countries. And so I held on hope that at some point that would still happen. So I mean, kudos to Tanzania. They will be able to open a whole new transport corridor, because now this route from Uganda to Tanga would make Uganda also very more attractive to a lot of the other countries in the region, including Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. So it was a big loss for the Kenyans, and Kenya's future as sort of the gateway to the region. And so that impact remains there. And so now we're left with LAPSET. And And you start looking at LAPSSET and saying, okay, what's the next sort of attractive play that Kenya has? So attracting South Sudan, of course, but again, it's a region in turmoil at the moment. So you look at all the partners who would benefit from LAPSSET. You know, Ethiopia is undergoing some transition. South Sudan has been suffering from its transition itself. And so it will take some time before we actually recalibrate and benefit from some of the investments that we're putting in at the moment.
From where you sit then, does this then affect, Kenya's trade, and as far as trade is concerned? I mean, Uganda and Kenya are concerned, because if you look at investment and trade, Uganda is one of our, key exporters,
I think
source markets actually.
I think Kenya has to really look its corridors now and start addressing some of the issues that the regional countries have been complaining for a long time. So, for example, the issues around corruption on the road, the issues, for example, around the way bridges, the infrastructure that's there for the truckers and that kind of thing. So they have to relook and really try and see how can they optimize that so that we do not lose out in the region. And I think that should be a huge priority for Kenya at the moment.
Now, what lessons can Kenya learn in as far as crude oil production is concerned from other states, especially African states that have gone ahead in as far as crude oil production is concerned?
I think a good country to learn from would be Ghana. So Ghana made a discovery and managed to get it onto market pretty quickly. Although it made also some mistakes in terms of borrowing. So, I mean, in terms of learning there, I think Ghana would be at the forefront of Kenya's learning in terms of even how they allocate the money. They've developed a very complex sort of fiscal regime that ensures that the money is not only spent for now, but it also has a future generation element to it. They ensure that the money is not all spent at once, which is, again, a huge risk, that as soon as you get all this money, then again, you just start going on a spending spree. So Ghana would be a country that I'd feel that Kenya needs to look at more closely.
Now, before we actually wind up this conversation, then, in your opinion, sir, from a person who sits within the value chain, what then can government do to ensure that fuel prices come down?
Yes, I mean, government, first of all, has to relook at the levies that are put on fuel. And then what we need also from the regulator is actually an analysis of the impact of this increment. For example, on the transport sector, on the food sector, because again, food is dependent on transport. And so government, ideally what government needs to do is just sort of lower the levies and fuel. And I think that's a role of Parliament. And we will be looking to petition Parliament to actually lower these levies on fuel.
So, in conclusion, this conversation has been around the viability, of crude oil production in Kenya. There's been a shift to renewable energy, but as you've said, the market is highly driven, by diesel-consuming industries per se. Futuristically, looking into long term, will this crude oil production come to fruition given our current scenario?
I believe it will. We have a resource, and so we need to use a resource before it again becomes obsolete. What you have to remember is also that crude oil does not only provide fuel, it also provides things like petrochemicals, including plastics and that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's still a resource that we'll need to use, but we have to have one eye on the energy transition. So if we are able to get the resource out now, we'll be able to invest in more renewable energy for the future. So our future lies in renewable energy, but we have a resource now that we need to use.
Our future lies on renewable energy, but we have a resource that we need to optimally utilize in good time before it becomes obsolete. These are sentiments shared by our guest this evening. That is the coordinator of the Kenya Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas, none other than Charles Wangoho. Thank you very much for giving us your time and ear to just learn about matters, the black gold as we refer to it. You're watching Business Insight.
Well, no, you're not seeing doubles. That was an earlier recorded interview there, just putting matters of oil and gas exploration, or rather crude oil, focus on fossil fuel there in the country into perspective. Now, this comes in the backdrop of analysts coming out to say that following this month fuel price review there, that the state chose a populist move, and that's why we have, the prices remaining constant, but with a promise of compensation to importers. So it seems we are not out of the woods yet. Now, crossing over to stories making headlines across the counties is that a project targeting host communities in northern Kenya is slowly changing the narrative that refugees receive preferential treatment as compared to the locals. Now, the project, which is being spearheaded by the government and the World Bank, is laying emphasis on meaningful integration, infrastructural development and provision of clean water. Details of this and other stories in our county news briefs.
For years, communities living near the Kakuma refugee camp have lamented against alleged preferential treatment given to refugees housed in the area. To change this narrative and foster cohesion between the communities, the government embarked on an upgrade of infrastructure and provision of utilities. The project has helped Kakuma residents to gain a stable source of income and improve their livelihood.
The implementation arrangement of the project started in 2019, where we pilot 40 community groups, funding each at a tune of 500,000, and then 8 sub-project intervention on wash activities in response to the pandemic.
Meanwhile, Muslim community in Bungoma is appealing the government and other well-wishers to offer relief assistance to the less fortunate in the society. The faithful say the current restriction of movement in some areas has disenfranchised many Kenyans. Elsewhere, residents of Kanjugu village in Githunguri constituency, Kiambu County, have turned to solar energy to mitigate the rising cost of electricity. The residents say they have been forced to abandon a borehole drilled by the national government due to the high cost of electricity involved in pumping the water.
Kama serikali ni lazima CS, PS na pia kamati ya bunge waketi na waangalie vile wataangalia wakulima wa chini, wanabiashara wa chini.
Finally, Kirinyaga County Security and Intelligence Committee has come to the rescue of 6 police officers at the PI police post in Moya East after they were ordered to vacate the premises. The officers had been directed to park and leave after the lease agreement for the plot they have been residing on for the last 10 years came to an end.
Tumekuwa na shida ya polisi wetu, wamekuwa wakifukuzwa hapa, wamepatiwa notice, imefika mwisho, lakini siku ya leo tumepata suluhisho kupitia our county commissioner pamoja na ofisi ya CDF.
The sporting arena, where Football Kenya Federation Women Premier League clubs have pleaded with the government to allow safe resumption of women football in the country. Now, this was revealed during the second phase of the COVID-19 vaccination exercise facilitated by the Ministry of Health and Sports.
Following the government's directive to curb the spread of coronavirus in the country, all sporting activities were suspended for the second time, leaving different federations with no option but suspending all their top-tier leagues. However, women football clubs in the country have pleaded with the government to allow safe resumption of their leagues in order to help them put food on the table in these pandemic times. Thika Queens, Zitex Sparks and Mathare United Women joined Kibera Soccer Ladies, Kayole Starlet, Gospel Women and Vihiga Queens in receiving the COVID-19 vaccine.
Juu sahii tuko idle, tumekaa tu, watu wengi wanapata ball, wanaanza hizi madawa za kulevya, lakini venye tulikuwa grao, at least ilikuwa inavoidia watu hizo vitu, unapatika una time, una ball,
si ucheza kitu keep busy, then inapatanga tunakam. So unajua kabla upatane na mtu huko nje ukudanganya, unapata time mob na kula kwa grao. Lakini unatukiwa idle, unapata hata kiika allowance tunapewa hii whatever tunapewa kidogo tupati saa.
Just urge the government to warudishe sports back
work na in hand with federation. Pia tunasema ligi venye tumepata hii vaccine tushaipata, warudishe ligi immediately.
Elsewhere, KCB women volleyball team has pulled out of the upcoming African Club Championship set for 19th of this month to 1st of next month in Sousse, Tunisia. This is after the team released 8 of its players picked to the national team Malkia striker squad to allow them to prepare for the 2021 Tokyo Olympics in July. Frederick Mwoki for Channel 1 Sports.
Now to the international scene, where Manchester City will play against PSG in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals, while Real Madrid will face Chelsea on the 27th of this month. Now, City reached the semis for the first time under Pep Guardiola after beating Borussia Dortmund 2-1 in Germany, winning a 4-2 on a 4-2 tie, winning the tie 4-2 on aggregate. Elsewhere, Liverpool's bid for 7th position at the Champions League title was ended by Real Madrid that battled to a 0-0 draw at Anfield to secure a 3-1 aggregate win.
Bjorn Kuipers blows his whistle and off we go.
Liverpool's UEFA Champions League campaign ended in disappointment as Real Madrid kept Jurgen Klopp's side at bay in a goalless draw at Anfield. The Reds were unable to turn around the 2-goal deficit from the first leg 3-1 defeat against the Spanish side. It was the second season running Liverpool exit the tournament at the hands of a team from Madrid. In Germany, Pep Guardiola's side reached the semi-finals after a 4-2 aggregate win over Borussia Dortmund after 3 successive exits at the last 8 stage of the Champions League. City came from a goal down to beat Dortmund 2-1 on the night and book a place against Paris Saint-Germain.
And now has a problem. Haaland tees up the shot. Bellingham has it now. And Bellingham has scored brilliantly. What a finish that is from the 17-year-old. And Mahrez fires in emphatically. Manchester City draw level in Dortmund, and that will do it for Manchester City.
The first leg of the semi-finals are scheduled for end of this month. In the UEFA Europa League tonight, Manchester United will hope to ease into the semi-finals of the Europa League when they welcome Granada at Old Trafford for the second leg of their quarter-final. United won the first leg 2-0 in Spain last week. However, Manchester United will be without suspended trio skipper Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw and Scott McTominay, with Eric Bailly and Anthony Martial being sidelines with illness and injury respectively, while Marcus Rashford is a doubt. Meanwhile, Arsenal will attempt to keep their prospects of European glory alive when they travel to Slavia Praha for the second leg of their quarterfinal tie. Mikel Arteta is waiting on the fitness of captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Martin Odegaard, but Kieran Tierney and David Luiz remain in the treatment room. In other matches set for tonight, Ajax trailing by 2-1 travel to Roma, while Villarreal host Dinamo Zagreb. Villarreal won 1-0 last time out.
Now, before we bring this to a close, an ongoing match between Manchester United and Granada for the Europa League. Manchester United is leading ahead with 1 goal against a 0 from Granada there. Remember, you can get further stories in regard to what is happening in all sectors as far as matters of sports are concerned on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, just to read some of your comments as we bring this to a close, you know, we have had the KCPE results announced this afternoon, and we have subsequently also shared the top 15 candidates. There's been a conversation, and some of you have asked as to why I walked in saying that girls run the world. Well, it's true. If you look at the top 3 there, they're all girls. Well, as you say, we run the world. And Suluhu Hassan there has also set the pace. Not to forget Kamala Harris. Now, to just get into that feedback, John Odwar, who's been watching this live broadcast from Kisumu County, says another session has begun for the next 4 years, and we pray that the fire is kept burning beyond the 4 years. Kudos to all those candidates who sat for their KCPE examinations. Further on, Professor Bigambo Okumo says, cheers to our bouncing babies who are marked for better times ahead, as well as Ma'am Nancy Karetha, who is watching from Kajiado North County, saying, to all the candidates, hongera, considering the drama of COVID-19 and uncertainties of 2020, they are heroes and heroines. We close at that. I'm Regina Manyara. Thank you very much for your company.
Good evening. I hope you're well. This is Channel 1 Weather Updates. My name is Irene Mchuma Odem. Tonight, there are scattered wet conditions across the country, but this has high intensity in the capital, the Lake Basin region and western sector, where there are showers accompanied by thunderstorms over several places. And these wet conditions will continue through to morning hours, as much as sunny intervals will prevail over a few places. The capital, Meru, Nyeri, Machakos, Makindu, Kitui, will experience rains during the early morning hours. The coastal strip will mainly be sunny, but Lamu and Mombasa will experience scattered wet conditions during the early morning hours. The northeastern parts of the country will also be sunny, but Wajir, Mandera and Lodwar will experience scattered wet conditions, and also several places along the border of Kenya and South Sudan. The Lake Basin region will experience sunny intervals, but areas of Kisumu, Kakamega, Kisii, Nyamira will experience rains during the morning hours. And in the afternoon, there will be showers accompanied by thunderstorms in the capital, Meru, Nyeri, Machakos, Kitui. The northeastern parts of the country will experience scattered wet conditions. The northwestern will continue to experience wet conditions, what we had experienced during the morning hours. The coastal strip will experience some cloudy weather conditions with rains in Mombasa, and also the Lake Basin region will continue to experience showers accompanied by thunderstorms, which will mainly affect Kisumu, Kakamega, Bungoma, Kisii, and Nyamira. Let's cross over to temperatures, and this is how it will be Friday. The highest across the country will be experienced in Lodwar and Garissa at 37 degrees Celsius. The capital will experience highs of 25 degrees Celsius. Let's now cross the borders and have a look at the international forecast. Be warm and God bless.